Welcome to the SBK Betting Podcast, a week after the week that was 5 glorious days of Royal Ascot, a mouth-watering racing action, so much to go through, so many fabulous performances and brilliant results, and really pleased that TC and Ross Millar join me again. It doesn't feel like yesterday, guys, that we were previewing Royal Ascot, and now here we are, looking back on what was, as I said, splendid 5 days of action. TC, I know that it was brilliant because we had all the international raiders. Sadly, I'd imagine from your perspective, the Americans didn't get the results that they wanted. No winners, but some great place efforts. What can you take away from it?
Yeah, I thought Love Reigns and Campanelle both ran well for the US. Golden Power obviously didn't show up. It was pretty disappointing the US didn't have a winner. Great for Australia that Nature Strip won the King's Stand. I thought that was the main talking point for Royal Ascot as well. An international contender coming over and winning. My highlight was probably Perfect Power from a personal perspective. Seeing him win saved me a great chunk from otherwise a terrible week. And it was good to see that he's still the best 3-year-old sprinter in Britain. I thought Ryan Moore was fantastic throughout the whole week. It was a complete masterclass day after day. And the horse to take out for me, one that maybe will go under the radar, because you know what, you don't always look back at these handicaps and go, yeah, this horse will win next time if they finish a long way down the field. But I liked Timecodes in the Palace of Holyrood House on Friday. I thought she ran extremely well. She finished 14th. People will just look at that form on paper and be like, nah, this horse didn't perform at Royal Ascot or whatever. But she had a terrible trip throughout. She was in real trouble from 2 furlongs to 1 furlong. She finished the race really nicely. And she just had such bad traffic in running. Tippy Toes is one for the tracker. Okay, really interesting that, Tippy Toes, not one that you would expect because there were so many obvious performances. So great to unearth the ones that might go under the radar, as you say. Ross, as Tom touched upon, some fabulous riding performances. That was definitely my highlight. You really get the cream really rises to the top when you have Royal Ascot like this. I thought Shane Cross was marvellous, exceptional, really intelligent ride on State of Rest, but obviously Ryan Moore just outshining them all. What was the standout for you?
I really enjoyed Perfect Power. I've watched it back a few times, and the more you watch it, the more impressed I am with it. But I think probably the performance of the week for me was probably in Spiral. And I say that through a slight vinegar taste in my mouth, because she did everything I thought she wouldn't do. If she steps forward from that, she's a real top class filly. She looks like she might even be better at 10 furlongs, which is a fearsome prospect. So for me to come and do that off the prep she'd had against a decent field, I thought was really impressive. So she would slightly reluctantly confessing to being my highlight of the week.
And considering that there was no homeless songs, I think that whatever Royal Ascot does, which I think is always so brilliant, is that it sets up some really exciting clashes. And homeless songs and Spiral, the idea of Baid and Caribus, and maybe even in Spiral and a Sussex Stakes, something like that. What we've got to look forward to for the rest of the summer, that's huge, isn't it?
Yeah, it pulls it all together. I think it finds a little bit of a pecking order amongst the colts and the fillies. I'd be slightly inclined to think that the fillies are maybe a better bunch than the colts. So you'd hope that maybe they'll pitch the fillies against the boys at some point sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it was a tough betting week. I'm not going to lie. Nature Strip was by far my most impressive performance of the week. Really put the cat amongst the pigeons, and I thought it was great that the international, essentially their faith in Royal Ascot was rewarded. I have such a soft spot for Heredia. I think that's a filly that will come out and be in Patton company now. She's a winner at the Sandringham for Richard Hannon, and she gets herself into a lot of trouble, but she is now still unbeaten. And I think she should be one to follow what they do with her. She's only 3 and she's beautifully bred. And I think that she can continue on that upward trajectory. So yeah, so much fallout from Royal Ascot. I know that as a saying that we're going to have a lot more to look forward to with a lot of these winners lining up against some other contenders that actually missed Royal Ascot. So plenty to look forward to as the season unfolds. But we're going to look at this weekend. We've got a big feature race in the shape of the Irish Derby, and there's more drama pre-race than actually we even know about the race yet, as we've got the most exciting aspect, if anything, for me, is that the Oaks winner Tuesday has been supplemented by Aidan O'Brien. This is really interesting. Obviously, Tom, the Ballydoyle team lacks strength and depth in terms of their colts. Tuesday was potentially a lucky winner of the Oaks. It's tricky to do this. You've got to go back to 1994 when there was the last filly that won this race. Some have attempted, only a handful. New York Girl was 7th in 2020. But it adds a good sort of recipe to what is already a nice feel to this race.
Yeah, I think Tuesday's inclusion and the fact that she's been supplemented by Aidan O'Brien for the Irish Derby is a huge tick in the box for this race, because without Tuesday, I mean, I think this would be a pretty dire affair for a Group 1 Irish Derby feature in the best 3-year-olds around. We would have Westover as a really short price favourite. Obviously, he finished 3rd at Epsom, but he didn't really show the tactical speed to even be a Derby horse that day. I think he ran okay. He probably would have finished 2nd with a clear run, but he was staying on past beating horses. And if he was going to go off a short price favourite in the Irish Derby, then I mean, it wouldn't really have warmed the cockles very much. So the fact that Tuesday is in the field, you know, it gives a different angle to the race. It looks like, well, it's being billed as a match between the two. But I'm interested to see which Aidan O'Brien runners are going to turn up. Obviously, we're recording this on the Wednesday before final declarations are out, so we're not 100% sure of the final field yet. But if a couple of other Aidan O'Brien horses do turn up in this race to supplement and go alongside Tuesday, then this really could be a decent renewal, much like last year, actually. I think the Irish Derby is generally a pretty weak race, but last year's renewal was really, really good, with Hurricane Lane eventually winning. And I think this year's renewal could have the depth if Aidan does decide to back up Tuesday with a couple of colts.
Yeah, it's true that it does have a feel, the same sort of makeup. Hurricane Lane, a 3rd, lost his front shoes, wasn't it, in the Derby, and then went on and won the Irish Derby en route to more success over in France, and then obviously the St. Leger. Ross, I said drama, that's not just it. Tuesday, obviously, coming into it is really sort of spiced it up, but I suppose the big talking point is that Rob Hornby is being replaced by Colin Keane. Rob rode Westover to slightly unlucky 3rd place, but Colin Keane has been booked to ride by Judd Munt. You know, he sits on 99 winners at the Curragh, whereas Rob has only ridden there once. So you can kind of see where Judd Munt's coming from, but it must be extremely disappointing for Rob.
Yeah, I was thinking about this actually this morning. I take the view that it's very much like trying to find your selection, isn't it? In a race, you want a horse that likes the ground, likes the trip, is well handicapped, all the rest of it. It's got to be a bit like that when finding the ideal jockey for the horse. I put a huge emphasis from my background in my eventing sport on knowing my horses. I go out onto my yard now and I could pretty much tell you where every dropping in the stable would be, how much water they've drunk by now. You can tell their mood by knowing them. I have always failed to understand that not more emphasis is put on that with a jockey, that, you know, I tried to get on a horse and I could tell what sort of mood it was in. Well, if you've never sat on that horse and you're getting your first feel down to the start, you're not really knowing whether they're in a good shape, whether they're actually a bit more keen they would normally be, in which case you might ride them with a bit more restraint than you initially intended. But then you contradict that with the fact that Colin Keane just knows this track so well. So yeah, I do think he's been hard done by, and I don't think he gave him a bad ride in the Derby. If he'd have found traffic through a poor choice, then fair enough. But he didn't have the horse to take the gap that was there. He had to wait because the horse needed him to wait. So I feel a bit sorry for him, but you can understand why they've made the decision.
It's really tricky because you feel like if Rob had the perfect run through, would they still have changed jockey? And because we know how gutted he was, it feels like a double dagger into the heart to say, right, we know you're gutted, we're going to make it even worse to you and say you can't have your redemption day. You at least attempt to have things pan out smoothly for you. So it's harsh on Rob, but as I said, it's similar to when Tom Marquand got jocked off English King in the Derby a couple of years ago and then came and won the St. Leger later on in the year. So look, I like to hope that he'll have his opportunities, but we'll go into this race because, it needs a lot of looking at, and I know that we've all got our own various opinions on it as well. So we'll go straight into our selections, I suppose, for the Irish Derby. Tom, you were saying it does have a similar makeup to last year. You got the 3rd in the Derby from this year. You've also got some unexposed. You've got the Cocked Hat winner, a bit like last year with Lone Eagle, in the shape of Lionel, but then you throw in Tuesday, the filly in the race. So it's a shape of a race, the out-and-out Derby feel to it. You've got an Oaks winner versus some horses that potentially, looking at it from my perspective, I thought Westover just looked like he needed every inch of that 1 mile 4. So if anything, is it Tuesday that's more likely? Where do you think the betting is going to shape around this?
Yeah, I think they're going to go off similar prices, maybe 6-4 and 13-8. I'm not quite sure which order. I think Tuesday's by far the most likely winner out of the two. Westover, yes, finished third in the Derby and is therefore going to take some attention. But as Ross said, and as you've said, I think he's a mile 6 horse at bare minimum. That's when we're going to see him at his best. And I don't really think the colour is going to suit him overly well. I want to be taking him on, especially at a short price. He entered the Derby as a horse that people weren't really considering as a major win threat. And the fact he caught the eye, finishers always catch the eye, don't they? No matter what race, what distance you run over. And then they're generally overbet next time out. I think Westover's a poor value play in here. And he may well go and win, but I don't want to be backing him over this trip. Tuesday's the most likely winner, as we said, but fillies just don't win this race on a regular basis. 1994 the last time. So I'm just going to look at something at a bigger price. And there really isn't that much depth in this race. Obviously, we don't have the final fields just yet, but if you're looking at huge prices, it's really hard to make a case for any of them. Hannibal Barca is an interesting runner for Joseph O'Brien if he turns up, but he didn't really look overly enamoured with going through with his final effort last time out. So I'm not too sure about his resolution. I'm just going to side with Stone Age at this stage. If he doesn't run, he doesn't run. But he was very impressive in his first 2 runs this year, hacked up in a maiden, won the Derby trial at Leopardstown with great ease from the front. And I don't really think Epsom suited him last time. Yes, he was ridden in third, kind of the position I thought he would be in. And he travelled through the race beautifully. But as soon as he was let down by Ryan Moore, he just didn't find anything off the bridle, finished 6th, got squeezed out. The connections did say he might not have stayed, and that is a slight issue. And maybe that will be the reason why he doesn't run here if he doesn't run. However, I think they're going to be more aggressive with him. He's a horse that seems to be at his best on the front. And we've seen the Curragh as a massive speed track in the past. Horses have gone clear in the Irish Derby, like Serpentine. Sovereign has gone clear in the Irish Derby and won this race. Nothing's come from behind. I think Stone Age will be the perfect horse tactically to win an Irish Derby. If he runs, I think he's a good value player around 7 or 8 to 1.
He's the one I thought, Tom, that might have just got a little bit upset as well by the fireworks. He got very, very hot, didn't he? He just didn't look always that happy, travelling over as well. I know he went over to France, wasn't it, as a 2-year-old, but he just never looked like the horse that we saw at Leopardstown the time before.
Yeah, I think there are good reasons why he didn't produce his best. The track, as you say, the prep and the build up towards the race might not have been ideal. Aidan O'Brien's horses do tend to get sweaty when they come over. I do notice that on a regular basis. I don't know whether it's a Galileo thing or I don't know what it is, but they do tend to get quite sweaty. Maybe Stone Age will just be seen to much better effect. And he hasn't actually got that much to find with the market protagonists likes of Tuesday and Westover in this race on official ratings.
Yeah, okay. Well, Tuesday, I remember, sort of went down to post. I remember the 3 Aidan O'Brien horses going down in their own time to the Oaks, very slowly and gently. And I thought, Ross, that Tuesday was a bit of a standout physically, and you'd expect it as well. She's beautifully bred, but I wonder what you think, because I thought she just about held on, didn't she? And she, if anything, I thought she might have come back in trip. So with her, Tuesday looks like maybe one that only gets 1 mile 4, and Westover looks like he needs further. So there could be some horse in there that just who gets the sweet spot just better.
Yeah, I think you'd be happier with Tuesday if they do run something else alongside her. To give her a little bit of protection in the race, because I'm sure if you're on a colt, you're going to want to try and dominate her a little bit physically through the early part of the race if you can. And B, just to make sure that the race is run at a tempo that's going to suit her and not suit the strong stayers. But I think on ability wise, it's not even close. Her getting through. I think she's got the single best piece of form at this trip. I think if Emily Upjohn was in here, she'd arguably be odds on. So I think she's by far and away the most likely winner. And I think she's got more enough to cope with Westover, who I think is probably a nice horse. I think Westover and Lionel needed every inch of a mile 4 in a listed contest on soft ground last time. I think they're going to be really interesting for the St. Ledger going forward, but I just cannot see them having the tactical speed to match Tuesday in this. So I think she'll win it quite comfortably, provided it doesn't turn into an absolute slog. The other one I'd throw in of interest is Pisbadil. He just didn't handle Epsom whatsoever. But on his Leopardstown run before that, over 10 furlongs, he really galvanised himself well in the last half furlong to beat Buckaroo going away. He should stay on mile 4, should handle this track. I think he could chase her home, but Tuesday for me is the winner of this.
Okay, confidence for Tuesday to defy all the stats and be the first filly since '94. Lionel is the horse that you picked up on that I'm going to put a bit more confidence behind. He's around 10-1, which is, I wouldn't want him any shorter now because he's only had the 3 runs. He got off the mark in the cocked hat, similar to Lone Eagle did last year. He ran an absolute blinder to finish second in this race last year. Davin Manouzier believes that this is a better horse than what he's shown. I think he won despite the race not working out in his favour. They absolutely crawled, went no gallop at all. I'd like to have a big field, a big setup. As I said, it's Wednesday. We don't know what the full field sizes are, but if he gets a stronger gallop and a little bit of rain, which I think they're due over the next couple of days, that will suit this horse. But he does need to improve big time. It's a sort of unnervy bet because I'm like TC, sort of against the top 2 in the market. And if any of them, I'll put some faith into Lionel, son of Lope de Vega, who's definitely, as both guys said, will want even further than this in time, but he's been kept fresh, whereas the others are off the back of hard races, you'd imagine, hard races at Epsom. So that's always something that is to keep in mind. Okay, so that's the Irish Derby. That's the feature, the classic on offer on Saturday. Another brilliant betting race is always the Northumberland Plate, which takes place at 3:30 at Newcastle on Saturday. Again, we're still without our final fields, but we've got a favourite in the shape of Roginski currently with Harry Davies, but Trueshan is looking likely to run in this race. Holly Dor booked. Alan King couldn't run him in 2 options at Royal Ascot last week because of the ground, but he'll have fair surface on the all-weather at Newcastle. So, Tom, this adds a good dimension to the race because he sort of helps a lot of horses out in terms of weight-wise. So it's good to have him in the race. Does it help your selection?
Yeah, this is a much better betting heat than the Irish Derby. Great to see Trueshan turn up. Obviously, couldn't run in these 2 entries at Royal Ascot due to the ground. He ran in this race last year, finished 6th off top weight. He's going to be carrying proper top weight this time around as well by the looks of things. Already 10 stone 8 currently with his mark of 120. Roginski, as you mentioned, the favourite, finished 3rd in this race last year. Back again, bit of a course specialist and should run well under the leading apprentice. However, this race, I always look at it with the angle of, has Brian Ellison got anything? He targets this race. It's eluded him over the years. I can't believe Seymour lost when he finished 2nd a few years back. He looked by far the likely winner, and to provide Brian Ellison with that big elusive victory in the Northumberland Plate, I think this year he will finally do it. And he's bought a horse in One Smooth Operator, I think purposely just to win this race. Purchased him for 65,000 guineas from David Simcock last year. And it's just been teetering away with him. He's run him a couple of times over this course and distance, another time over shorter at Newcastle. And then he returned this year with a run on turf, and he's just not as good on turf. He's got a beautiful US pedigree. He's bred for the dirt and all-weather tracks, synthetic surfaces. So I think I can only imagine this has been the only target for One Smooth Operator. He's been placed, finishing the frame on 11 of his 12 all-weather starts. There's so much going in his favour. I love his running style for this race. There's a big field, 20 runners. They're going to go hard early. He's a hold-up horse. He's going to move into the field. And last year with Nicholas T, who won this race, came from last to first. I think it's going to be a similar case with One Smooth Operator. He can run off a mark of 95, so he's £3 well in. And I think this is just the perfect time. He's going to be primed for the race. He's going to be around 8-9-1. That's just a great bet, and definitely my bet of the week away from my nap.
Oh, excited. Well, yeah, definitely an interesting insight if you think Brian Ellison is just sort of loves this race and wants to find the ideal horse for it. And he clearly sort of ran him last time, maybe just to get another run under his belt, just to get him spot on for today, do you reckon?
Yeah, exactly. Blow away the cobwebs at York. That race was run at a real stop-start gallop. It didn't suit any horse in the race whatsoever. Without a Fight won the race, but it clearly just didn't suit One Smooth Operator, who was held up last. Nothing came from behind, aside from John Leaper, who stayed on powerfully in the final furlong for minor money. I just put a complete line through that. It was definitely getting rid of the rust and priming him for this race. Okay, so he's about 10-1 as it stands. He might even get shorter when we get the declarations in. And we've had a mixed bag, Ross, with this race in the past. We've seen some well-fancied horses come in, and Hugo Palmer did well in it a couple of years ago with Caravan of Hope, who went off favourite, and Roginski is for him as well. Do you see this coming from someone at the top of the market? Is it obvious this year?
All-weather bumpers are always tricky, Jess. In truth, I don't. And I'd want to be against Trueshan, just in terms of a preparation. You know, he'd have had to have been got ready for his main target of the season, the Ascot Gold Cup on the Thursday. wouldn't have had a run. Now, ordinarily in that scenario, you'd probably give him a piece of work on the Friday because you've tuned him up there at boiling point. Well, you couldn't have given him a piece of work on Friday because you might well be running the Queen Alexandra on the Saturday. So I just don't like that from a preparation point of view. You're sort of moving the target all the time. I don't need much reason to take him on, so that's enough for me. The one I've landed on is Golden Flame, who a bit like TC Selection has a dirt pedigree. He clearly didn't stay 2.5 miles last time in the Ascot Stakes. Before that, he's been a winner on your weather at Chelmsford, and he beat Pied Piper over 14 furlongs. Well, that's not a shoddy bit of form. And then he's been second to Valley Forge at Haydock on his penultimate start. He was beaten ahead, giving Valley Forge £4. Now gets a £2 pull at the weights. Valley Forge is to the head of the market, and Golden Flame is going to be a decent double-figure price. In a sector that I don't have a huge amount of knowledge on, I just thought he was far too big a price for a yard who wouldn't be adverse to turning him out fairly quickly with these much overused phrase tough Mark Johnston horse. But there you go.
Do you think it's a kind of race? I know you don't know. It's not the race that probably inspires you of all of them throughout the year, but do you think that this is the kind of race where you can lead and set the pace and control it, which you'd imagine Golden Flame will do?
Yeah, I think you can, and I think he's got to get to the front. He's got to try and control it. He's not gonna navigate himself through traffic. So from a price point of view, I just couldn't understand the disparity in price between him and Valley Forge.
Okay, yeah, he's around about the 33 to 1 mark again, not yet with declarations in. So interesting horses. Obviously, this is the race that trainers and the likes will target when they see their horses is sort of looking like the ideal type. And I think at the beginning of the year, the horse that I'm going to put up wasn't necessarily one of those, whereas TC has got a selection that probably Brian Ellison had bought with this in mind. I don't necessarily think Spirit Mixer was going to always be a Northumberland Plate horse at the beginning of the year. He's had to find his winning ways, and he got back to them at Salisbury at the beginning of the season in May, and then he's just really been on a good upward curve since. And Callum Hutchinson, he's riding on a bit of a crest of a wave, full of confidence after his big race ride success at Royal Ascot last year. This is a horse that Andrew Balding is entrusted in him to sort of use his £5 claim, but also to sort of educate him as a race rider. And this horse hasn't looked always that easy. He's beautifully bred by Frankel out of Arabian Queen. He's bred to be better than what he was at the beginning of the season, which was a rating of 79. He's now for Marcus 97. And you can forgive him for his last run at Chester, where I don't think things panned out the way that he wanted it to. But if you go back to his Chelmsford run in May, where he just travelled so strongly, and he'll benefit from a really good run race. I think that he'll be really suited by the Northumberland Plate makeup, and he's a horse that is just thriving at the moment. And I like to hope that he represents a bit of value at around 11 to 1. Andrew Balding will have a few darts to throw at this race. So Northumberland Plate, always a good betting heat, as Tom was saying, and plenty to look forward to, especially when we get our declarations in as well. But we're going to go into now our bets of the week, and Ross and Tom have the opportunity to pick their nap, which can be anywhere on Saturday, but we need a good case for it as well. So Ross, I'm going to come to you first, and your bet of the week, please.
So my bet of the week comes in the 225 from Russell on the all-weather, and Glenn Shields stood out a mile to me. He comes out comfortably the best at the weights if you take out the 3-year-old Ebro River, and you have to take him out because his form this year has just been nowhere near what he was doing last year. He's got to be opposed. Glenn Shields is an experienced sprinter. I think he can dominate for this from the front. I think he'll break quicker than Sense of Duty and Spycatcher, who will want to go forward. I think he'll dominate this. He's won his last 2 at Newcastle on your weather. He's 2 from 4. He's not favourite. I think he should be favourite, and I think he wins this for Holly Doyle.
Okay, Glenn Shield there, yeah, the Holly Doyle, who again riding with so much confidence, and this is one of the horses that's really sort of elevated her career. So that's for Ross. Tom, where are you looking?
Yeah, Newcastle as well. This time in the 5:13, a horse called Spirit Dancer. Last year he ran in this race, broke really well, but was super keen behind a slow pace. pulled his head out for the first mile of the event and just didn't settle at all, but then produced a withering run and still managed to win decisively by a clear margin. That came off a mark of 85. We've seen him 4 times since, each occasion on turf. I think he's a much better all-weather horse. He looks like another horse that's been targeted at this meeting to win this race once again. He's down to a mark of 92. But his best RPR is 101. I think he still remains well handicapped. And they're going to go a faster clip this year. There are horses in here that want to make the pace. So I think this race is going to set up perfectly for Spirit Dancer, who's very much unexposed on the all-weather and still open to plenty of improvement.
Okay, Spirit Dancer in the 5:13 at Newcastle. So plenty to look at Newcastle this weekend. Newmarket is got a good race card, and that's where I'm going to go to for the Maureen Britton Memorial Empress Filly Stakes listed race over 6 furlongs, 205. And Minnetonka, who created a huge impression on debut when bolting up at Salisbury, beating a good-looking field on paper. What she beat is still to be tested, but she is bred to be very good. She's by Kingman and is the first foal of Perfect Angel, who's group placed at 2. And she was second to Harry Angel, no less, in the Mill Reef. So her dam was very good and very precocious as a juvenile. And she's also a half sister to Group 3 winner Angel's Hideaway, who was very speedy. So there's lots to like on pedigree, but she's got the class to take it up a notch as well. And you'd imagine that they'd be hoping that they could even think of things like the Guineas and the likes next year. But there's lots to like on pedigree. She is doubly entered on the weekend. She's got a race at Windsor as well, but I'd imagine they're going to give this listed race a go. The Richard Hannon team. Pat Dobbs is already booked on Minnetonka for Saturday at Newmarket. I'm just keen to follow her wherever she goes. She's currently about 5-2. So that's my bet of the week for Saturday. We're also going to go into plays from Ross, Tom and myself, because SBK has place only odds on all races, and I think there's clearly plenty to look forward to this weekend, and there are probably a couple, TC, that you like that are at bigger odds.
Yeah, there's one, and it's a race that I think you've looked at as well for a good race for a place play, and that's the 420 at the Curragh, the Group 3 International Stakes. There are some interesting horses in here. Last year's Irish 2000 Guineas winner McSweeney's in the field, Tetrarch Stakes winner Buckaroo's in there as well, and an improving filly called Rumbles of Thunder. But all 3 enter the race with big doubts. McSweeney's been really disappointing ever since he won the Irish 2000 Guineas, for example, and he's the likely market leader. So it's a good race for a place play, and I like Helvic Dream around 8-1. Obviously, that's the win price. The place odds will be odds against. There is a question mark whether he runs, because he does need give underfoot. However, he's got decent form on good ground, good enough form to suggest that he'll be able to compete in a race of this nature. I like how he's run so far this year. Now, I know he finished 8th of 8th last time out, but he wasn't well suited by the race. He was held up last in a race dominated by those up front. I think he'll be ridden much more aggressive this time around. He's got 2 wins, 2 places from 7 starts at the Curragh, well suited by the track. I just think he's going to run into a place, and he's perfect for this place play segment.
I suppose it's worthwhile that I throw in my 2 cents in the same race, because it also comes in this race, the 420 at the Curragh, purely because I've been following Ross Carberry and her upward trajectory all season, and also Paddy Toomey is fast becoming one of my favourite trainers in Ireland. He places his horses very well, and they always seem to have a little bit left to give. And despite Ross Carberry winning her last 4 races on the trot, she looks like she could be still improving. She won despite hanging in the Munster Oaks last time. This race is definitely stronger. She does have 2 entries this weekend, so it's interesting to see which one Paddy Toomey chances with her. They're both over 10 furlongs, and although she might be up against Colts and she possibly even wants further than this, I think they're willing to give a bigger prize a go. And if she takes up the international stakes engagement, she's just the improver compared to some questionable types. Tom obviously has mentioned his selection there, Helvic Dream, but he comes off the back of a disappointing run last time. So for my selection, Ross Carberry, she's definitely the horse there that's got a lot more positives and negatives in her favour. So she's around 12-1 for a big day at the Curragh on Saturday. So place play for Ross, this is where you thrive. So we're hoping that we found a gem for you here, Ross.
Yeah, it was just a bit too far out to have a good dig at Uttoxeter. So I've stuck with some hard study at Newcastle on your weather. And one that stood out, I think he's going to offer big price, is Auriferous for the Balding Yard. Possibly they might use Callum Hutchinson to claim again. He's got good form on your weather. He's won at Southall. He's been placed twice at Kempton. He's golden horn out of a Selkirk, so he should stay. And he has got one really nice piece of form over this trip at Newbury, finishing half a length behind a horse with no name. Horse with no name is rated 95. He's 130 plus rated hurdler. I think he's well worth trying over this trip on your weather off a mark of just 84. If they claimed anything off that, I think he could really outrun what I expect to be some decent odds.
Okay, interesting place to play. We've got a lot to look forward to at Newcastle across the weekend. Stat Attack, it's a new feature, and I can see that smile. Look at him beaming. Tom Collins has been waiting for this all his life. What have you got for us?
Yeah, huge fan of this new feature, I have to say, Jess. 2 stats for you. Now, obviously, we're far out, so it's really difficult to get a good stat that people may miss, but a couple of trainer stats. The first is Charlie Appleby. He's had 8 winners from 19 runners at Windsor in his career, a 42% strike rate. When you look across all the tracks, he averages around a 24% strike rate, so this is obviously quite noteworthy. It also produces a £1 level stakes profit. So make sure you follow Charlie Appleby's runners at Windsor. He has 2 runners in the listed Midsummer Stakes, or 2 entries, maybe just 1 runner. And those 2 entries are Modern News, who's already jocked up, and Art Deval, who's not. So maybe Modern News will be the horse to follow at Windsor on Saturday. The other Stat Attack, William Haggis, 33% with his 3-year-olds at Newcastle. The best of any all-weather track by some considerable margin for the trainer. He has 2 fillies entered at Newcastle, 2 3-year-old fillies, Sense of Duty and Perfect News. They're both in the Group 3 Chip Chase Stakes. Sense of Duty will go off favourite if she runs. And this is the 225 on Saturday.
Okay, brilliant. Those are fab stats. I don't know if we can be able to follow them, Ross.
Well, you know what,
it's going to have to be
stats,
good.
Jess. 100% of winners have 4 legs. My stat is more of an observation, really. Charlie and Mark Johnston have a stack of entries across Saturday, pretty much across the country, and multiple entries at most tracks. Fragrance is their only entry, and she runs in the 248 at Windsor. She's their only entry there. She's also entered at Pontefract, which would be a much shorter trip for them. She entered there on the Monday. If she is entered and lines up at Windsor on Saturday, I think that's a really notable bit of travel, the price of fuel as it is, and I'd be keen to follow her. She's got some good form to her name as well.
Okay, so some nice stats there. I'm going to go across the water. Not a huge stat, and it's possibly quite obvious, especially if you're a follower of the Irish form, but I mentioned Paddy Toomey. He's running at a 71% strike rate at the moment for the last 14 days, 4 winners from 7 runners. And he's not a man to over race his horses. He hasn't had a huge amount of runners of late, but he's got a good selection of entries at the Curragh this weekend. So he's worth following just as a trainer in hot form. And the other jockey in good form is an apprentice in Jake Cohen. He's had 2 doubles the last 2 days, but one at Sligo, which is a very tricky track to ride, and Ballinrobe the day before. He is worth a lot for his claim. He rides a lot for Joseph O'Brien, and imagine he'll be used to good effect in some of the big handicaps this weekend. So he's a name to remember. Less of a stat, more of a side-on, an add-on for some good names that are worth thinking of when you're looking at the racing this weekend. So that is a good overall picture for you of the racing this weekend. So we've got your place play, your bet of the week, you've got your stats, you've got your main feature races from the Irish Derby and the Northumberland Plate. We've obviously got the entries that will be coming out on Thursday, but I hope that we've given you something to inspire you for this weekend's racing. A reminder that new SBK customers can get £30 in free bets by depositing £10. Please remember to like, subscribe on whatever podcast channel that you listen to. There's obviously a lot of more podcasts and YouTube content. I know Tom's doing plenty of that too, and there's a lot of written word as well if you'd like some bedtime reading too. So thank you for joining us as always. We hope we've given you something to think about for this weekend, and we'll be back again next week.